Today, everything changes for you. There is absolutely nothing any of us can do to change our past. But please know that your decision to join us in the purity of our praise unto God today definitely changes your future. St. Peter United decrees that you are worthy, you are loved, you are accepted, and you have a purpose.
Oh, good morning, St. Peter United. Thank you so much to the collective for inviting Spirit in, and thank you, Leslie, so much for having me to be a part of this speaker series. Truly, it's a privilege to stand before you today and bring you this installment of Atomic Habits. Over the last few weeks, we've been talking about, learning about the ways in which small change leads to massive results. In the first installment, law number 1, make it obvious, Phoenix shared his testimony and talked about how God made himself obvious and known in his life. And last week, Latriva talked about law number 2, make it attractive, highlighting the benefits of not only making habits attractive, but the hidden gem of anticipating the fruits of good habits. Today, we will add a layer to this series by speaking about law number 3, make it easy. And in doing so, my hope today is that we can walk away having challenged some of our thinking that often stands in the way of long-term change. So I invite you to lean in for this message that I like to call easy, like Sunday morning. Let us pray. Spirit of the living God, fall fresh on us. Thank you for being here with us in this place on this Pentecost Sunday. We thank you for the strength to face each day and for being a faithful comfort during hard times. We thank you for those who have gone before us, those who gave their lives for our freedoms. We also ask a special blessing for those who are grieving this week and that you would surround them with your love. We ask that you give us fresh understanding as we walk in our purpose. Thank you for your provision and for your blessings. In Christ's name, amen. I first learned about Atomic Habits from a client. They told me that they had been reading it while in therapy with me and were so excited to share the results and also recommend that I read it as well. That was when I read Atomic Habits for the first time. Since then, I've recommended this book to a few other clients and friends, and I have found it incredibly useful, both personally and professionally. Phoenix mentioned a couple weeks ago that habits are neither good nor bad, but that the author labels them as being either effective, non-effective, or neutral. I like that. I also like to think of habits as being serving, or non-serving, or neutral. Law number 3 is make it easy. When something is easy, it's near effortless. Our basic human nature is to seek pleasure and avoid pain. In other words, we seek out what feels good, what feels seamless, and we avoid unpleasant situations. People love throwing around the word easy when they're trying to convince us to do something or buy something. You ever watch those late night, hour-long advertisements? Right? You know the ones, they start out, the frame is in black and white, and it starts out by saying something like, don't you just hate it when you have to cook dinner for a hungry family and you just don't have the time? We've all seen those. Then the frame pops into full color, right, where you're now introduced to the holy grail of preparing a meal. Woohoo! Right? There's always some kind of a product, some state-of-the-art cooking utensil designed to make life just easier, right? We're amazed at now the fewer steps involved in doing something that would have taken more time to do the regular way. James Clear suggests that one of the barriers to changing our habits lies in how difficult we make it. Some of us take time to overplan before we're willing to execute something because we want to delay failure that we think we're going to experience. We make good habits difficult by adding many steps to create the perfect conditions for the habit to occur. You ever heard of quality over quantity? Anybody live by that motto? Quality over quantity. Always present your best. Well, contrary to the notion of quality over quantity, he argues that we should concern ourselves with doing something over and over again as a form of practice rather than waiting until we've achieved the just right conditions to take a single action. He argues that it's not the amount of time it takes to develop a serving habit, but the number of times you engage the habit. Repetition, repetition, repetition. He urges us to consider quantity over quality. If we attempt a perfect habit, we'll create too much friction, and we'll be less likely to take that action consistently. In like manner, James Clear emphasizes the pitfalls of motion versus action. Let us say that you decide that you'd like to develop the habit of going to bed earlier so that you can have a better handle on your mornings. Well, motion would be Googling the benefits of an added hour of sleep per night, sampling music to find the perfect soundtrack for going to bed, or even talking to self-declared morning people for their advice and tips for a good night's rest. Is it me, or is it, morning people just think that they are just all of that? Here, the author suggests that action is the doing. Rather than getting stuck in the preparation phase, maybe setting a timer for bedtime at night to signal when it's time for bedtime might be the easiest actionable step to achieve these habits. So James Clear further suggests that motivation is overrated. So I just want to see something, a little bit of congregational participation. How many of you, and also those of you that are online, feel free to drop in a comment. I'll go back and read it later, I promise. Right? How many of you were taught that wanting something bad enough is what leads to doing it? Okay. Wanting something bad enough is what leads to doing it. Or if we are not taking necessary action, we must not want it bad enough. Yep, right? Okay. So you remember earlier when I said that our basic human nature is to seek pleasure and avoid pain, right? So our actual motivation is to be lazy and do whatever is convenient. That's what comes natural to us. According to Clear, the law of least effort states that when given the choice between two similar options, people will naturally gravitate towards the option that requires the least amount of work. So we're actually motivated to do what is easy, and we can use this. We can use this. Now, as long as we've lived here, I've never gotten completely adjusted to these Texas feeder roads. It's like, I love them, but I really hate them. They're great if you want to avoid some traffic, if that works out for you. But I really hate them. I can't stand them. I really just don't like it. See, where I come from, where we come from, Bay Area, hey, come on. Where I come from, you're driving on the freeway, then you exit the freeway onto the streets to your destination. Now, if you should pass your destination by mistake, you simply make a turn, and then you make another turn, and then you're back around to your intended destination. But here, no. Pass your destination if you want to. You shall be on this road for another few miles, at which point you got to find that first turnaround. You got to find that roundabout. You got to go around the roundabout. You got to drive that same long distance in the opposite direction, passing up your destination again. Then when you get to the end, you got to find another roundabout just right before your spot. You got to turn around, come back down again, and make sure you catch it. I will never, What? I will never adjust to this kind of arrangement. Never, right? So I will admit, there have been many a day, y'all, when I have passed up my intended destination and settled for the next best place on the same road. One thing you might hear me say often is, listen here, I ain't got time for all that. I'm trying to keep this simple. James Clear argues that our instinct is to seek the path of least resistance, the one that will require the least amount of work. And for my old school people in here that love them some Commodores, they say, make it easy, easy like Sunday morning. Oh, yes. Atomic Habits is about taking small, actionable steps in a way that allows us to change a behavior over time. He suggests we make it easy. Now, what Atomic Habits does not address are some of the underlying explanations for why we make it hard. The author explains our efforts to avoid failure, yes, but in the spirit of Mental Health Awareness Month, let's peel this back just a little, shall we? If you're anything like me, you might have grown up hearing adults say, listen here, child, you can learn this the easy way, or you can learn this the hard way. There are psychosocial explanations for why we do things the hard way. If you are not a man, not a white person, not a heterosexual person, not a cisgender person, not a Christian, not from a high socioeconomic background, not born in this country, or not temporarily able-bodied, because you know those of us who are able-bodied, this is temporary, right? Then you know all too well about the hard of life. The hard is inherent. The hard is a given. And if you are not one of these people that I listed, then you were likely given bunches of safety talks by loved ones for how to be safe and navigate in an unfair world. When I was growing up, I received the message that I had to work twice as hard to be half as good. And this became the drive behind many of my achievements as a younger person. I've seen that reflected in my adulthood as well. Ask me to do a relatively simple thing, and I will come up with a 36-point plan for how to get there. Muscle memory engages, and I fixate on what is the absolute best I can do. There's always a better way. If you got anxiety, you can relate to this, yeah? Yeah. We make things hard because life is already hard. There are neurobiological explanations for why we do things the hard way. I declare this to be a trauma-informed church. Trauma informs our habits. Trauma informs our habits. Trauma interferes with the parts of the brain that govern fear and stress responses, emotional regulation, and executive functions. Executive functions is where the cooking in the brain around I should develop better habits comes from. So trauma impairs the parts of the brain that govern executive functions. When a person suffers a trauma, say for example, not having one's needs met, basic needs met as a child, and those could be practical needs, they could be emotional needs, they could be psychological needs. When those needs are not met, that child has to figure out how to get those needs met. Because the brain is rapidly developing during this time, neural pathways get created that are difficult to correct the older the person gets. That same child might grow up into an adult who behaves in a fiercely independent way, successful by all intents and purposes, very successful from the outside. However, they make certain that they don't have to need people around them. These will be the folks that say, I did this all by myself. Didn't nobody help me. I did it on my own, right? People often evolve and grow into fiercely independent, yet at the same time, distanced from help and support from other people. They might get easily overwhelmed, exhausted, prone to anxiety. Ultimately, when they run out of steam, they'll beat themselves up for lacking the motivation to practice healthy habits when they notice how much they're struggling. They'll search for better systems, productivity tools to improve how they organize and balance their time and commitments. Imagine, if you will, how difficult it would be for a person I've just described to consistently practice serving habits with all of that going on. Some of you know, either from social media or just in conversation, that last year I decided to embark on a new chapter of learning EMDR therapy for the treatment of trauma. EMDR stands for Eye Movement Desensitization and Reprocessing. Don't be intimidated by those words. In fact, simply put, it's a specialized therapy that involves helping a person's brain do the natural work of healing itself from traumatic experience so the person no longer suffers intense activation when they're triggered. You know how if you accidentally injure yourself, let us say you might get a cut, right? You have an injury. Your body knows, without conscious effort on your part, how to heal that. You don't have to tell your blood cells, okay, let's all get ready now. Let's all get together. Let's all gather up. Go get your friends, gather up, right? I need you to go ahead and close off this wound and guard me against infection, right? Your body knows how to do that on its own. The brain is the same way as it relates to negative and traumatic experience. It can literally heal itself, and that's what EMDR does. It involves eye movements, tapping, and other kinds of stimulation so that the brain can do its healing thing. I still remember the time I spent being in motion towards this training. I reached out to my colleagues who I knew had already gone through the process, and baby, I had my questions ready. I did a ton of research to find the best program with the best curriculum and the best instructors. I set monthly savings goals because these kinds of trainings are a massive investment. But I was also excited to learn learn a new form of treatment that's proven to help clients reach trauma recovery faster than with other methods. But then it came time to take action. Now, I'm a lifelong learner, but it had been a while since I took on something that felt so challenging and so tall. I remember becoming frustrated after those 8-hour-long training days. I would be feeling so aggravated, and I remember saying out loud and in my head, just what in the hell have I gotten myself into? Why would I do this? In the past 10 years of being a therapist, this training proved to be one of the hardest I'd ever attempted. I realized soon after that I was suffering from my own unreasonable expectations for how quickly I should be able to learn this thing, and I was denying myself the normal process of learning. There are a lot of educators in this room, and I'm sure that each of them will tell you that learning usually involves a little bit of confusion. Am I right? Where my educators at, right? But I wasn't giving myself that permission. I was working twice as hard, trying to digest all of the small pieces while neglecting the larger concepts. My anxiety kicked in. I abandoned my mantra of keep this simple, keep things simple, and I couldn't wrap my head around how to make it easy. My trainers encouraged me to slice it thinner, right? Slice it thinner by reviewing basic concepts little at a time, until they became more automatic. This would make it so I'd be more likely to continue mastering the other concepts and methods. I have to say, I would consider EMDR therapy a miracle of sorts, and given the option to go through all of this again, I would in a heartbeat. The outcomes are pretty darn incredible. A habit could be seen as an obstacle to getting what you want. But what we are truly striving for is the outcome the habit delivers. Trying to get to the good stuff, yeah? There are some habits that become easier with practice. For example, if connection with others is an outcome that you seek, you might benefit from the practice of self-acceptance. When you aren't in the practice of self-acceptance, you work overtime trying to be liked by others. You might pretend to be interested in things that you really have no interest in. You might pretend to have certain personality traits over others, and in extreme cases, even adopt an entire persona in hopes of being accepted by those who don't actually see the real you. If this is your consistent practice, it can feel like second nature. But truly, this is a lot of work. You must first assume the perspectives of outside people, adopt their perception as you understand it, and then hide your true self when you're around them. life becomes harder to live. If a more peaceful, centered life is the outcome that you seek, then, help me, Spirit, you might benefit from the practice of minding your own business. We are living in a tense political climate. If you are in the habit of concerning yourself with things that have nothing to do with you, or worse, working to limit the rights and access of others, it may seem automatic, but it's actually more work than you realize. This behavior requires that you assume to know what's best for others. Analyze someone else's situation or issue you know very little about. Apply your own limited opinion, which involves your own privilege, and then proceed to judge. That's actually a lot of work. That's a lot of work. Let me explain something to you. I have been minding my business now for many years. Let me tell you something. I have never learned more about different things. I have never expanded in such a way, minding my own business, because my business is to work on me, right? Yeah, the practice. It's a practice. Repetition, repetition, repetition. Ooh, I don't like that. Oh, let me mind my own business. Ain't got nothing to do with me. What is my business? If joy is the outcome that you seek, then you might benefit from the practice of daily gratitude. Now, don't get me wrong here. Please don't hear me say, Devaney said that I shouldn't be trying to think of what I want different from please don't hear me say that. There is nothing wrong with wanting something better for your life. In fact, we encourage that here. But the time you spend dwelling in dissatisfaction and longing for a reality that's different from the one you have is a negative experience in and of itself. What you seek, you will find. So, how can we make it easy to live on purpose? Consider your spiritual practices. Are you working to better understand your own faith? Are you actively deconstructing what no longer fits your belief system? Are you actively working on revising what you think, what you know? This can feel like an overwhelming process, but rather than setting out to boil the ocean on all of your non-serving beliefs, James Clear might encourage you to read a new piece of literature for just 2 minutes. Make it easy. Consider your financial practices. Are you trying to become more money savvy? Rather than setting a lofty financial goal, you might just set up your bank account so that it automatically deposits into a savings account. Make it easy. Consider your relational practices. Are you striving for an identity where you value close relationships? Rather than aiming to be the best friend anyone has ever had or the best spouse that anyone has ever seen, make it easy. Take 2 minutes, text somebody, hey, how you doing? I'm just thinking about you. When you go home, take on a task that you know your spouse can't stand doing, right? And take less than 2 minutes to do it. Start small, start simply, right? Make it easy. Easy like Sunday morning. Make it easy. Easy like Sunday morning.